the then DG of NIMASA, Dr. Bashir Jamu, to be a special advisor on strategy and communications. I was bagging my business, teaching public speaking and communication skills to very high-profile people. He was one of my students back then, and he felt, you can't be here, you need to come and work in government. And I said to him, hell no. Those are my words to him. Hell no. Leave me alone, let me mind my business. Until my wife intervened and my mentor, a man I respect so much, Professor Patu Tony, a man that I always say taught me a lot of what I know today, got on the phone and said to me, Ubon, what are you waiting for? You need some experience in government. And so I packed my bags and headed into the unknown to start a voyage in maritime. Now, I was thrown into that sector without any orientation. I had to work at the highest level with the chief executive day in, day out, and I had to learn very fast. The politics of it, and I'm glad I have an SSA here so he understands what I'm talking about. The politics of it, and of course, the technicalities of maritime. And one of the things I quickly discovered, which is really what is going to buoy what I share with you today, was that the real money is not in how much NIMASA collect or was collecting, or in those contracts. The real money, the real wealth was in the maritime sector itself. The entire ecosystem of what we now know and recognize as the blue economy. But before I proceed, permit me to also extend my respect and acknowledgement of the presence of the SSA to the Governor on Housing Ministry of Lagos State, Honorable Ayo Amodu. Honorable, my apologies, sorry, this just came to me. So we're in good hands. We have two SSAs here. So I feel a kindred spirit knowing the roles of special advisors to principal officers. And one of the things that I learned quickly, and I had what I would call the fortuity of leading, was the agency's Blue Economy Initiative, which we called From Crude to Blue. We are coming down to the real estate sector, but we need to know where the journey began. In other words, we had to start a conversation about our reliance on fossil fuels. Of course, it brings in most of our petrodollars. But does it really bring in, as a sector, the developmental expectations in terms of economics? 6 years ago, it was a report in the Nation newspaper. NLNG and NCDMB signed a $12 billion deal for LNG Train 7 to employ 10,000 people. Please, I want to crave your indulgence. Let's just deal with estimate values here. Can someone help me calculate $12 billion across 10,000 jobs? How much will it be per job? Anyone with any device, please. Help me out. $12 billion by 10,000 jobs. We are talking estimate values. We know that was an investment, but let us just cut the promoters of the project some slack. Let's say that was the total money meant for job and everything associated with it. What do we have per person? $1.2 million. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, $1.2 million multiplied by 1,500 naira. How much? 1.8 billion. 1.8 billion per job. This is the point I want to make. The expectation, and this is just very basic and simple economics, the expectation from that calculation alone is that for there to be any benefit, it would have to trickle down from each of those 10,000 persons. What is called trickle down economics. So if 5,000 of us decide to go and stash 50% of that money somewhere in the US, what is its economic value? It's practically zero. This scenario is just an example of how enclave in nature, how restricted in nature the oil sector is. It demands huge investments, huge capital outlays per project. But its economic effects is so limited, so restricted. That's why if I were to ask each of you here, if you know anyone that works in the oil sector, you'll have to rack up your head. It's an exclusive economy, it's an exclusive club. Nigeria cannot grow economically on the strength of an economy that is on the strength of a sector that is exclusive, enclave by nature. We have seen it. And so it makes sense for us to say, out of that 12 billion, estate surveyors and valuers, we're going to invest just 1 billion out of that 12 billion in real estate. What do you think will happen in terms of employment? I'm asking you, anyone? This is an open conversation now. You know your numbers, you know your business. Will it employ just 10,000 people? Estate players in the estate sector, will it employ just 10,000 people? Give me a guess. Give me a guess. $1 billion investment in real estate across, maybe let's say a PPP project. Let's say we're building some smart cities. Let's say we're building some sets of estates. Can someone give me a number, please? Pardon? Over 20,000? Any other person? It certainly will be much more than 12 billion to 10,000. So I share this with you to present to you a picture of two cities, a tale of two cities, or a tale of two economies. Oil and gas, which we have relied upon to drive our economy, and then the blue economy, which in itself is an emergent economy, an expand sector. And we're going to see some of the thinking behind it. And if I am able to help everyone in this room, whether you're a policymaker or a practitioner, to shift your thinking, then the possibilities will be endless. So, the blue economy and the real estate development, the sea of opportunities before us. The World Bank tells us that if the ocean were a country, it would be the 7th largest economy in the world. Let's start with that premise. The 7th largest economy in the world. The 6th largest economy is the UK. So after the UK, the ocean economy would be the 2nd largest in the world. For very obvious reasons. 70% of our planet is water. 70%. And the economic sustenance of the planet itself, apart from the biology of it, is water. How? Global trade. $70 to 80% of global trade is maritime. Maritime is blue. Think about it. During COVID, no planes could fly. No cars could run. We all got stuck. Everybody sat back at home. Only one place on earth was active. The sea lanes of the world. Transporting goods, supplies, equipment to help nations survive. Why? Because most of what we consume is delivered to us by water. So this is another important premise, because we do not understand the context. Every attempt we make to try to break into the blue economy from a blue cities perspective, which is one of the buckets of the blue economy, will challenge us and could even discourage us. So whether we like it or not, this is what the blue economy is about. So let's look at some definition of the blue economy, and let's take what the World Bank tells us about the blue economy. The World Bank says that the blue economy is the sustainable use of ocean resources for economic growth. It didn't say for revenues, and we have to begin to shift this mindset away from revenues. Revenues are essentially meant to be a fallout of actual growth. There's too much fixation on revenues without growth. It is not a sustainable approach. Revenues are a given. When economic growth takes place, if you are generating so much revenues and it leaves nothing in terms of economic impact and growth, what it means is that when next we go in search of revenues, we have to increase the toll. That's what it means. So the oceans are there untapped because there's no growth. And all of the values. So whether we're in government, the fixation of revenue, the fixation towards revenue, or the fixation on revenue has to be modified, has to be tempered. Likewise, for those of us in business who are also fixated on revenues, how do I make money? It is not a sustainable approach without creating growth. Because what guarantees revenue in perpetuity is ensuring that the growth engine continues to run. If you're coming constantly for revenues, like the concept of Stephen Covey's work, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, when he talked about the golden goose, the goose that lays the golden egg. Each morning the farmer goes in, the goose lays an egg, he takes it to its golden cells. Every morning he keeps going. Then he got so tired, he said, look, why don't I just slice the goose open and take all the eggs? Well, there's a problem with that. In the final analysis, You can take all the egg, then there's no more goose. That's a classical example of over-fixation on revenues alone or on making money alone. There must be growth. The farmer ought to have been thinking of, oh, all right, I have one goose laying a golden egg. What do I need to do to expand capacity? That's what the blue economy is about. So it is a call to us to know that we must take steps, make the necessary commitment, make the necessary investment towards ensuring that there's growth, and then the money we're looking for will come. There's money, the blue economy. So let's go back to our definition. The sustainable use of ocean resources. The ocean has a lot of resources. Those resources are within the ocean. Those resources are also above and around the ocean, and those resources are also adjacent the ocean. If I wanted to define the blue economy simply to the average Nigeria, I would say everything water, whatever is inside the water, your fishes, your shrimps, those living organisms and plants, whatever is beneath at the bottom of the water, the resources you can mine from it. Whatever is on top of the water, your ability to carry out transportation activities. And then, of course, the fallout effects of what happens on the coasts or the adjacency value of water, meaning coastal communities, trading taking place along that line, the development of estates along that line, hubs. That entire ecosystem would be my own definition or explanation of what the blue economy means, so that the average Nigerian understands it and appreciates it, because Nigeria is a coastal state. Nigeria is supposed to be thriving via the blue economy. That is the understanding we are yet to inject fully into our minds. Many people live in Lagos but don't even have that appreciation that Lagos used to go by the appellation state of aquatic splendor. Now that sounds like a mouthful. But that's blue economy. So those are your ocean resources. And it says when we use these ocean resources, certain things must happen. First, economic growth. Second, improved livelihoods. There are people living around water bodies that are worse off. That is not blue economy. That's like brown economy. They are worse off. So that's not blue economy. It must improve their livelihoods. So whether it is to enable them go to schools, go to good schools, get medical support, and be as comfortable and have some measure of decency, improved livelihoods, it's a factor. And then, of course, it must create jobs. Jobs. It must create jobs. Employment, so that the people within that area can have a decent means of getting income to sustain their lives. And then, lastly, it must also preserve the health of the ocean ecosystem. So, as you begin to prepare your minds to go into the blue economy, from a real estate standpoint, you must understand what the blue economy actually means and what the 5 key elements represent. So that when you design projects, when you plan projects, when you propose or market or execute projects, all these elements must be there. So if you're building marinas, for instance, because those are the things we should begin to take for granted along our coasts. If you are building seaside estates, luxury estates, hotels, which cost so much more to be in, or take, we shouldn't go too far, take the Eco Atlantic, for instance. If you're doing all of this, you must keep in mind whether you're participating as a financier or participating as a transaction advisor or participating as an actual builder. you must keep these things in view. Sustainability, economic growth, which is where you make your money, improving the livelihoods of those within that context, making sure that you're asking yourself, how many jobs are we creating? And then ensuring that matters such as pollution are addressed. We take a look at our water, there's so much that needs to be done in that regard. Plastics in waters everywhere. These things have to be looked at collectively to ensure that we meet the definition of what the blue economy actually represents. I'm going to move on by showing us some facts and figures concerning the blue economy and why it is such an imperative. Globally, the blue economy is worth about $1.5 trillion. $1.5 trillion globally. Africa has managed, according to the AFDB, to capture about 296 of that economic value. And then Nigeria is positioned as having 10% of that. Understandably, we have a very expanded coast. From Badagry here in Lagos to Bakassi in Cross River or thereabouts, 853 kilometers. These are just conservative estimates to show us the potential. $30 billion. Can the blue economy bring us at least $1 billion? $1 billion is how much in Naira terms? 1.5 trillion? Is it? 1.5 trillion. These are the considerations, these are the things we must have at the back of our minds as we engage in this conversation. And I'm hoping, which is going to form one or two of my recommendations, that FIABC can begin to take the lead. Not just in advocacy. We are past the stage of advocacy. We are way, way, way behind. I'm talking now about engagement. Reaching out. Reaching out. Yes, we need policies. But don't wait for policies. I remember one of my famous motivational quotes. I used to do a lot of motivational speaking when I first started out some 25 years ago. It says, I couldn't wait for my ship to come in, so I had to swim out to it. I couldn't wait for success to come to me. Yes, that's the exact quotation. I used to use it back then. If you ever read the Achievers Manual that I published back in the day, I couldn't wait for success, so I had to swim out to it. So FIABC, NIESB, that's the mindset you must have. You do have government officials here. I am sure for a state like Lagos, Lagos is the center of excellence. Lagos always leads. There are some policy initiatives. We see that even in the various designations. But there are some policy elements that you are going to have to be the one to prod them to do. That's why it's called private sector-led initiative. 13 years ago, Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, because he wanted to deliver packages swiftly, after starting Amazon Prime, which was one-day delivery, was not satisfied with just one-day delivery, he wanted instant delivery. So what did he do? He started test running drones to deliver packages within 30 minutes. That was 13 years ago. So 2002, yeah, 2025, 13 years ago. So 2012, I beg your pardon. And 60 Minutes had an interview with Jeff Bezos, and he said, look, I've done this. The problem that we have is that the FAA, that's the Federal Aviation Administration, they are so far behind. What you are doing, what you have just test run is confusing them. Think about it. Sometimes it has to be that way. Sometimes it has to be that way. That's why it's called a partnership. Government needs all the partnership it can get from those of us in the private sector. All the partnership. And don't just sit back and wait for policies. You can no longer rely on just advocacy and appeal. You've now got to move into engagement. And when we're talking of engagement, you're saying, for instance, Fiapsi, we're going to visit the governor of Lagos State. Lagos is a coastal city. We have some leverage. Some of our members are in the cabinet. We are not going there to say, Mr. Governor, as you know, the blue economy is this, that, and the other, and we need to tap into it. The ship has left the shore on that long ago. Kenya is doing far better than we are. We are behind, but we have the mass to actually, once we get it right, overtake any African nation. You're going to say, if you can open up this space for us, PPP arrangement, the final say on occupancy is the governor. The same way we have succeeded in building estates out of nowhere. There are places that are estates today that 10 years ago, if you mentioned it, I still cringe. That you mean there's an estate there. Would I love to live in those places? But when you see the drone view of those estates, when you hear people telling you that they live there, it's a miracle what the real estate sector has been able to accomplish. And we now know from the current rebasing of the GDP, the preliminary submission is that real estate has what? Has overtaken oil and gas in terms of GDP performance. That should tell us that there's something there. We should all be paying attention to it. So you've worked this miracle on the land. We're saying it's time to take your miracle prowess to the waters. Started in the UK last year or 2 years ago. The private sector has to be very aggressive.